Hello, this is Addis News. I'm Solomon Danye. Thanks for joining me.
A unilateral ceasefire was put into place, implemented by the central government. I think that is a good move, even a very strategic one. It would enhance humanitarian assistance.
Now the Ethiopian forces are very much concentrating on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam area, the Sudanese-Ethiopian border. They want to destroy that attention.
The unilateral ceasefire proclaimed by the federal government was, I think, based on humanitarian reasons.
They are trying to pull in, they are trying to create a kind of magnetic field for the Ethiopian forces to come in, back into Tigray and disrupt the farming season.
Deputy President of Ethiopia's Amhara region, Fanta Mandafro, has told Al Jazeera that additional forces have been deployed to the borders with Tigray to counter Tigray fighters who launched a new offensive earlier this week. In a recent exclusive interview, Fanta asserted that the Amhara regional government is defending its people against the aggression of TPLF, which has opened an aggressive war that is targeting civilians with the objective of ethnic cleansing.
At least they should be aware of and be informed, be on the same platform. That is, whenever the aggressors came, at least they have to prepare themselves in any way to defend in any mechanism that they have.
So take up arms.
Yes.
Addressing the claim by the TPLF that the disputed areas are taken by force during the military operation, Fanta said those areas were annexed 30 years ago by the TPLF without consulting any force representing Amhara.
We have never ever accepted. The Amhara people and the regional government has never endorsed it. We have never been consulted. So whenever you say historical disputes, it takes you some years behind, and one time it was there, another time it was here. That's what you call a dispute. It has never been. So it couldn't be just a dispute. It was rather taken unilaterally by the TPLF. It was decided.
Ethiopia's representative to the UN, Ambassador Taye Atskaselasse, shares Fanta's claim that the TPLF included the areas into Tigray without the consent of the people of Amhara.
There are uncompleted grievings, mournings, such as the Maikadra massacre by the TPLF youth group, the suffering of the people of Wolkayet and Tagade, who have been evicted from their ancestral land over the last 30 years. So there needs to be proper closure. The political culture of impunity should have closure.
Ethiopians all over the world are currently participating in a Twitter hashtag campaign with a view to denounce the criminality of the terrorist TPLF group. Through their continued tweets, Ethiopians call upon the world community to denounce atrocities being committed by the outlawed TPLF force. Circulating tweets depict the recruit of children for war, killings of civilians, other terror acts of TPLF must be condemned by the world community to ensure law and order in Ethiopia and the Horn region at large. Hashtag child soldiers, hashtag children not soldiers, and hashtag TPLF is a terrorist group are among the highly circulating hashtags in the campaign. The campaign is also aimed at combating TPLF distortions and lies to the people of the world. Ethiopia's law enforcement operation in the northern part of Ethiopia was distorted and misrepresented in reputable media outlets in the West, and from social media posts, critics say the Tigray People's Liberation Front-led government in Ethiopia was such a despot regime that paid Western journalists to portray TPLF's positive image to the rest of the world. The Ethiopian government voiced such concerns repeatedly. Though the mass media is believed to report with balance, media houses can be misused for destructive purposes. Well, we are witnessing reports from some international media outlets about situations in Tigray is a clear proof. I'm now joined on the phone by Samuel Getachew, who is a media practitioner. Thank you for having you, Mr. Samuel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Why do you think the reason for some media went negatively to report about the situation in Tigray, opposing realities on the ground?
I mean, if the question is about the use of child soldiers, I think we all have to look at it in a very negative way when children are involved in a conflict that was started by adults. But looking at what the New York Times has done, it's really difficult for me to criticize my colleagues. But I have to say that the New York Times has this tradition of sometimes abusing its own territory. I remember in Kenya when the bombing happened. I remember when they were posting photos of the dead Kenyans on their media and their websites and their newspapers, and I've never seen an American dead person being portrayed in their newspaper. So they do make mistakes. I mean, the New York Times is, again, it's one of the best newspapers in the world. I grew up reading it. I admire it. But they do make mistakes once in a while, and I hope this will be a learning experience for them, because no children should be exploited, especially to make a point about a conflict that's ongoing and seems to have victims of so many people, including young people.
Mr. Samuel Getachew, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
A legal expert condemned the TPLF's brazen act of recruiting child soldiers in its expansionist tendencies weeks after the federal government announced a unilateral ceasefire. The act, says the legal expert Cherene Tordofa, constitutes a war crime. Sadly, however, the international community has failed to denounce the act, rather encouraging the TPLF to advance to neighboring Amhara territories. Goshumelis reports.
The TPLF has rebuked a unilateral ceasefire declared by the government of Abiy Ahmed, rather bent on advancing to neighboring Amhara. In its wanton disregard of international law, the TPLF is recruiting thousands of child soldiers as well as youths numbed with narcotics. Talking to ETV English, legal expert Cherene Tordofa blamed the international community for failing to discharge its responsibility of denouncing TPLF's war crime.
The international law, child soldier is a war crime. Recruiting child soldiers subjects the recruiter to a war crime. Okay, this has happened all over the world. They have been condemning in the rest part of the world, but the international community, now the international media are making mockery out of this. Okay, they are saying the young and energized Tigray Defense Force have retaken territories and beaten the federal government. This is what they are saying. This is really sad to hear from such established institutions.
Cherene said the US and its Western allies have lent deaf ears to Ethiopia's appeal for respect of the ceasefire and international law.
They were one-sided. They were following their national interests. Okay, it is them who have, re-escalated the conflict in Tigray. They gave deaf ear to child soldiers. They give deaf ear to the, mass killings, massive evictions, okay, the humanitarian crisis, the escalations, even the escalation, the aggression by the junta, So they simply hammered the federal government.
The international community has been active objecting to such acts elsewhere, but in Ethiopian case, it has displayed sheer double standard, he pointed out.
One thing must be clear. The law which provides that a child should not be recruited for army has its foundation in the West. Okay? Sovereignty of a nation is propounded by the West. Law enforcement concepts are propounded by the West. Now the West is going against its own ideas when it comes to Ethiopia. So Ethiopia should continue to expose, the wrongdoings of this junta.
Reflecting on the one-sided nature of the Western media outlets and most of the international community, Alamayo Aradda, for his part, said the intent of TPLF in arming children is to expose them to heavy fighting and shift blames on the Ethiopian government.
And what do? You see, they give one Kalashnikov to a very young person, probably not older than 12. And there will be others who will be following him. And they think that if the Ethiopian forces kill these youngsters and then they spread it within the media of the international media and claim that the Ethiopian forces are killing children.
But since the TPLF, as hinted by some of its leaders like Getachew Reda, may advance all the way to Addis Ababa, if left unchecked, Chernet urged the federal government to intensify defense and effectively repels its aggression in the border areas.
The escalation of the conflict is, I think, designed to spread the conflict all over the nation, to take it to the Amhara region, to take it to the Afar region, and if possible, throughout the country. So I think if that is allowed, it is very dangerous for the national unity and integrity of the nation. So the government should continue in enforcing the law. The law enforcement process must continue.
Some aid agencies and humanitarian operators use aid as mask to secure their national interest and rescue TPLF. He said the government needs to be very cautious.
I'm now joined on the phone by Simena Kiros, who is a lawyer by profession, to tell us more about the recruitment of child soldiers by the TPLF. Good to have you, sir.
Good evening.
The government is accusing the TPLF of recruiting children for war, and photos of children with guns have surfaced on social media as proof. What does the international law say about recruiting children for war?
Recruitment of children for war is prohibited both under international human rights law and international humanitarian law. So children should not be recruited. They should not be trained for military activities. They should not be deployed in combat areas. It is strictly prohibited. And if it is done so, it constitutes a war crime. So I think the TPLF, for whatever reason, is engaged into this scandalous activity, and the international community should strongly condemn this activity. It should not be tolerated by any standard.
And what do you think is the reason for the international community to remain silent about the situation?
I really am very much puzzled by the silence of the international community regarding the deployment of children in combat zone, and obviously who are not trained to engage in combat, for that matter. there were several activities, criminal activities committed by the TPLF against Ethiopians and civilians against government institutions. The international community is very much silent on that. But if the state is not acting in the way international community demands, which often happens to be unfair, they make noise from every corner. And as the previous commentator at which I said, the international community is employing double standard in this conflict. And I don't think the international community appears to be interested to have peace in the northern part of Ethiopia. And I don't think the international community is fair in the treatment of Ethiopia in general, and Ethiopia in relation to the issues in Tigray region in particular.
Thank you for your time, sir. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Chief of the Somali region, Mustafa Mohammed, says the war that is going on in the north of Ethiopia is between TPLF and the federal government of Ethiopia, not between two regions. The TPLF terrorists are perpetrating to dismantle law and order in the country, Mustafa said. Mustafa also called upon Ethiopians to continue fighting against the TPLF terrorist group, which has been conspiring to dismantle the nation. Concerns being raised by the TPLF clique have nothing with quest of self-administration. Rather, they are aimed at misleading the international community and disintegrate the nation, he said, calling all to play their share in neutralizing the outlawed group.
ጁንታው እንግዲህ ሂሳብ አወራርዳለሁ የሚለው በግልጽ የተናገረው የአማራ ህዝብ ነው። ሂሳብ ማወራረድ ካለ
The TPLF clique has recently announced it to dismantle the people of Amhara. They have been committing ethnically motivated killings toward the Amhara citizens, snatching their lands and looting their properties. They have also been disseminating hatred towards the people of Amhara for other ethnic groups, develop anti-Amhara sentiment for the past 27 years. Similar appalling conspiracies were also done by the clique in Somalia, Oromia, and other regional states. The terrorist group's agenda was not in line with its human rights and self-determination agenda. The terrorist group was trying to attack the regions and destroy the country. If the terrorist group had the respect and sympathy of the people of Tigray, it should not have harassed other regions again. The Somali government and the people of Somalia are ready to play their part in the law enforcement operation to reverse the activities of the terrorist group. The Somali region is preparing to deploy security forces to quell the group's attacks.
The National Disaster Risk Management Commission announced that additional machinery are being installed for inspection of humanitarian cargoes heading to Tigray region. Commissioner Mutuku Kasa stated that a convoy of 60 heavy trucks loaded with food and non-food items has entered Mekelle city. The installation of the additional machinery is aimed at speeding up humanitarian aid delivery to the region. 2 machineries are under assembly at checkpoints in Sardo and Afdera towns as procurement of other 10 is underway, Mutuku added.
For thousands of years, the peoples of the Horn of Africa have revered the mighty Nile. Its spiritual significance to these lands has been enshrined in poetry, music, and spoken word for time immemorial. And in a land that is holy to Christians and Muslims and followers of many faiths, these waters hold a place in the hearts of millions of Africans. And in all this time, the waters have flowed with only a dream of being able to harness and help bring millions of women, children, and men out from darkness. Today, a new dawn is upon us, when a continent can rejoice in unison. The grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam stands as a beacon of hope for all Africans. The use of a hydroelectric dam which does not consume the water, but rather allows it to continue its flow to our brothers and sisters in Sudan and Egypt will finally allow the lights to turn on in all of the African Nile Basin countries. Since the dawn of time, Ethiopia, who contributes 80% plus of the waters, has used 0%. Today, more than 60% of Ethiopians do not have access to basic electricity. Ethiopia has watched as her soil and minerals be swept away to irrigate the cotton farms of Egypt, while her mothers still carry firewood upon their backs and sit in darkness. The time for a fair and equitable share of the Nile is now. The time for all 11 African nations who feed the Nile to share in its life-giving potential is now. This is truly a dam of inclusivity, of kindness, and of shared prosperity. Light, energy, education, food security, and a chance for prosperity for millions. This is Africa's dam. This is our dam. This is my dam.
Egypt and Sudan have denied the importance of Ethiopia's dam to all the three countries, and they have shown strong opposition to the project, believing Ethiopia could emerge as a regional power. Egypt's president said Thursday his country wants to help Ethiopians in their development endeavor, but Egypt's water share is a red line. Suntayo Tamras tells us more.
In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian news agency, Ethiopian activist Mecca Adem explained the development benefits of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam for Egypt and Sudan as well. She noted that the construction of GERD would pave the way for Ethiopia to accelerate its development. Apart from its national development advantages to Ethiopia, the GERD will also provide affordable electric energy to the Horn of Africa, including Egypt, the activist said. Egypt and Sudan are well aware of this, she said, adding that the countries are, however, engaged in activities that disrupt the construction of the dam, with the assumption that Ethiopia could emerge as regional power, about which they are not happy. Emphasizing Ethiopia's sound legal position and the right to utilize its natural resources for the benefit of its people without harming others, the activist stated that Ethiopia needs the dam to provide electricity for its over 60 million people living in darkness. Regarding the dispute on the second-round filling of the dam, Mecca said the filling is an integral part of the construction process, as agreed under the Declaration of Principles. On the other hand, Egypt Today online media reported that Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said Egypt's water security is a red line that can never be crossed, whether anyone likes it or not. Referring to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam issue, he addressed Egyptians saying their concern about GERD is legitimate, but it shall be talked calmly and in brief. Sisi reminded the crowd that he talked to the Ethiopians and Sudanese of the Nile as a river for partnership and for good, and he wants the good for all of them. He stands by the Ethiopian side in using GERD as a means of development in Ethiopia as well as anything for the Ethiopians' welfare, Sisi affirmed. In this status quo, Ethiopia maintains the principle of equitable share of the Abai water, and it needs the trilateral negotiation over GERD shall resume soon.
At the end of the day, what I heard from the statements, to go back to the African Union. So that's what we are trying to do. We expect that the AU chair will call the three parties and restart the negotiation in good faith. Good faith negotiation is the only way out for this problem.
Some Egyptians now call for reassessing their relations with Russia after it failed to back Egypt's view on Ethiopia's Nile Dam at the Security Council this month, although overall ties remain strong. Calls are being made by some in Egypt to reassess relations with Russia, long viewed as an ally of Cairo, amid accusations that Moscow failed to support Egypt's position on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The Russian lack of enough support for the Egyptian position on the dam was shocking to many local observers at a time when international positions on this dam are apparently becoming a defining issue for Egypt's relations with the outside world. In addition to its contribution in reducing siltation and the cost incurred as a result on dams in downstream countries, GERD is a good opportunity to enhance cooperation and economic integration in the region.
solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Welcome back. This is Addis News Hour. Africa leads